Yeah.
and, I'd had about 2 or 3 gin and tonics. So I was sort of right on top of the cam, and I hadn't started to go around the backside. And anyway, this guy, Clarence Cross, his name was there with his wife. And I went on for about 10 minutes, and Ken and I had the whole place hysterics. I mean, Richard Petty was there, and Cale Yard was there. Or most of the guys were there because they all liked Ken's show. And this guy, Clarence Cross, had come down specifically to look at NASCAR with a view to CBS taking it on. So I did about a 5-minute shtick, and it was all very funny. And when I sat down, his wife said,
"The Red Sox are trying for their second straight victory."
On the stage.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Dwayne Kuiper joined by Mike Krukow for today's MVP baseball game with EA Sports. Today's American League game is between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees.
Well, I say that. I mean, I qualified came 8th in the race on Thursday, which can't be that bad. Although on the first lap, the big race.
Here's the game's first batter, Johnny Damon. This lefty's among the best at hitting right-handed pitchers.
You're picking up speed, and you finally get around to turn 3, and now by the time you come off turn 4, you're about up to speed. And I'm in the middle of this pack, and there's smoke and dust, and you can smell the concrete where the odd guys scraping down the concrete. You smell the tires smoke with all touching each other. And I'm in the middle of this pack thinking, have I done the right thing here? Probably not what I should be doing.
Yeah. You're questioning your life decisions as you're rewind. That's funny.
But that's all beside the point. The thing was that Clarence was there and obviously took back good reports to CBS. And in 1979, as I was still working at CBS, I was part of the broadcast team. Big Bill did not like the idea at all. He thought it was the worst thing they could do because he thought it would take away from the gate. So it was blacked out in Florida, blacked out in Georgia, Alabama, maybe even North Carolina or South Carolina. But I mean, he blacked out a lot. And I mean, everything was like you couldn't read about it, really. You couldn't write a story like that because the race was okay. And, of course, Cale and Donnie Allison were duking it out for the lead. They were way gone, and they were just followed each other around. And, well, you all know what happened. Of course, on the last lap, I'm not quite sure who went down on who, but, I mean, the next thing, they're both on the apron going to 3. And then they go up, one of them goes up and hits the wall, and then all hell breaks loose. They start this fight. And old Cale, he had a bit of a comb-over job. Well, of course, when he took his helmet off, this hair now is wafting around out here. He's fighting Donnie. Meanwhile, everybody's hero, Richard Petty, comes through from a distant third to take his umpteenth win at Daytona 500. So half the crowd think that's the best thing since sliced bread. Meanwhile, Bobby Allison, who finishes, I don't know, second or third, he goes round on the slowing down lap. So he jumps out the car down at turn 3 and joins in the fracas. And, of course, Ken Squire's going mad in the booth. And the icing on the cake was that up in New York, up in the northeast, they had a terrific snowstorm. So everybody was stuck at home. And they thinking they're going to get, maybe a couple of 3 million, maybe. And I think they had like 6.5, 7 million people watching this race. And the dramatic end was just you couldn't read it, you couldn't write it. And so that did we know that this was going to be like the absolute moment for NASCAR. As it happened, it was the absolute turning point for NASCAR because then CBS were going to do Talladega 500, Mississippi 400, and we always used to do the Charlotte race too, the 600. And it just transformed because then suddenly all the TV networks are knocking themselves over to do NASCAR. And as you say, I mean, it was really the quintessential moment for NASCAR. It just put them right on the map.
I wonder, as a broadcaster, so back in those days, obviously we cover the practices and the qualifying, and
I remember even just some short time ago, practices and qualifying, they weren't on TV. But I know that there's a lot of preparation that goes into broadcasting a race, and I'm certain that in that moment you and Ken were both making sure that you had every I dotted and every T crossed throughout the week. So you're at Daytona for Speed Weeks, getting ready to broadcast that race. What's your preparation like?
It was a big deal. I mean, CBS really did push the boat out. I mean, they didn't mess about. Our director was Mike. He used to do. He was one of the top baseball guys. Everybody was new to racing, and the production levels were very high. We had hundreds of big crew, and what was then regarded as a lot of cameras, but probably by today's standards, it would be pretty weak. Obviously, we didn't have any onboards then. That was to come.
There was one. Benny Parsons had the onboard, and it sort of half worked.
Yeah, well,
and he fell out with the mechanical problems. But that thing was huge and weighed several hundred pounds.
Well, that was the thing, and the teams were very reluctant to put them in because they weighed a lot. And of course, the guys putting them in, the crews putting them in, it took a lot of time. And of course, the crews, the car crew, didn't like that at all because it really was pretty time consuming.
They still don't.
That's true. Dale Jr.'s got stories with Tony Uri about those cameras.
Yeah.
Of course, the expertise for those cameras then, funny enough, didn't come from here. It came from Australia. Channel 7 in Australia that Lee Diffie used to work with. They had some guru. They put them in their cars in the Bathurst 1000, which is a sedan car race around mountain circuit just outside Sydney. And these were the guys that were doing that. And then when we really got serious about it, a couple of years later, we had one in Cale's car. And these guys, all through practice, they said, we got this funny kind of feedback. We don't know what it is. We looked at all the wiring, and we looked at this, and we looked at that, and go out again. And God, it's still there. What the hell is it? It's some sort of feedback. Turned out that Cale, when he's driving, mimics the engine. So he's sitting there going, and these guys are looking all over the place for some sort of wiring malfunction.
Yes.
And it's all the time it's Cale going.
So. This I believe is like the 1983 or 84 Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And he won the race, right? And if you listen to the broadcast, you can hear it. You can hear Cale in there going.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And the first year, I didn't know what the hell it was.
I don't think that anybody to this day. I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard that story told publicly. Like Dillner, you're a historian, and you. Never heard that Cale Yarborough mimicked the engine entirely.
Causing the producers all kinds of
Imagine
chaos.
his whole career. I wonder what he did on the short tracks.
That's hysterical.
What did he do for the brakes?
Right. What did he do for the crashes? Pow!
Down to the left side. And he's out.
Owie!
Yeah, owie, yeah.
So if you get back to that 79 Daytona race, you just said at the beginning that, those people in New York just look at NASCAR, some southern redneck, just a bunch of rednecks down there. After the race, did you go, yep, that's about what we saw, a bunch of rednecks fighting on the
whatever they obviously they enjoyed the fight, probably more than the race.
Most rednecks do.
But I mean, as far as CBS were concerned, I mean, it just changed their whole outlook to the whole thing. And of course, the racing itself by then was actually pretty sophisticated. The cars were getting. I mean, I drove that car of Benny's. They were a bit basic then, but nowadays, I mean, they're just real so state of the art. I mean, you guys actually, I think NASCAR spend more time in the wind tunnel than Formula One because the car is supposed to look kind of like the real thing, and you want to eke out that extra tenth of a second. Extra tenth over the 2.5 miles by some sort of aero work.
Right.
It's difficult to achieve, so they have to spend hours in the wind tunnel, a little bit of a tweak here, a bit of a tweak there, but they're still going to fit the template and a lot of other stuff. So, obviously, these days, I mean, it's incredibly sophisticated because you've got to look at the times and the speeds and that sort of stuff to realise that this is real racing. And And CBS got it, and like I say, they jumped right in on it, and we did quite a few of the other races, including it gradually wound down until they only did Daytona, Talladega 500 in August, and the Michigan 400, and we did that for. When I worked for them, I did 18 500, 17 500, and 17 Michigan, and 17. I was in the booth for about 10 years, and then. I was replaced, and they put me in the pits, which is not really my deal. But to be in the pits, you really need to be a reporter. Well, I'm not a reporter, I'm a driver, so that wasn't,
I understand exactly what you're talking about.
That wasn't my place, really.
We get to, with NBC, there's a couple of weekends where they'll stick me in the garage for a practice or two, just to make sure I remember how hard that job is. So that I have good respect for Kelly Stavis and Marty Snyder and those guys that are doing that
But
job.
for you, I mean, I was always very amazed at how well received I was in the garage by all the drivers at the time, including your dad, because I was amazed that so many of them knew who I was.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was sort of. I'd won a lot of races, but I didn't think they'd be interested in other racing. Well, of course, it turns out they're incredibly interested in other racing, especially the Formula One. Everybody sits glued to the Formula One down in the garage area. So I was impressed with that, and I had an experience with your dad. I was in the pit. By now, I'm in the pits. It's the Michigan 400, and he dropped out. And as you know, your dad was a very intimidating guy. They didn't call him the Intimidator for nothing. And everybody tiptoed around him all the time because he was pretty volatile. Anyway, we finally get, and you know what it's like in the garage, you're doing an interview, you've got the guy, he's just come out of some horrendous crash, so he's all hyped up, the adrenaline's flowing, you know how you feel, I mean, you're on edge. And the director said over the headset, we're just going to commercial. God,
Yes.
Oh.
So can you just hang on a minute now? Sure. And he looks at me and says, yeah, sure. Anyway, we do the interview. He goes back inside the truck, inside the motorhome. And they said, unfortunately, we didn't get that properly. Can you do it? Can you do it again? I mean, talk about how exactly am I going to ask Dale to do that again? And he was just as good as gold. Hey, Dave, I understand these things. Sorry, I didn't well.
Did you go up in
Really?
Yeah.
How did you do it?
Well, I don't remember the full gory details. It must be very intimidating. Hello, Mr. Earnhardt. It's your old pal, Davey Hobbs here.
Didn't get a good win on that one at all.
We just thought that was a rehearsal. We'd like to do it again. I don't know what I said, but anyway, he came out again. It was good as gold. So, but it was a bit unnerving.
I bet.
Yeah.
So that's funny because when y'all were doing the 1979 Daytona 500, he was just this kid from Naples.
Yeah.
And I don't know, then to see you do all those races and he transforms himself and his persona into this sort of intimidating thing, because he wasn't when he first ran the 1979 Daytona 500. Wasn't nothing intimidating about him. But so it's funny that he sort of had that effect on people, even the people that knew him for so long.
Yeah, well, he kept himself to himself pretty much, but like you say, in 1979 when he was just really getting going, I mean, he was a problem then, not a real problem to talk to at all. And the top guys, as you know, were Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough, the Allison brothers.
Who was the best guy to work with? Like, there was who was the best interview, and as far as the back in the Cup days, probably in the 80s, throughout the 80s.
Well, quite honestly, it was Darrell.
Yeah.
I always used to say to the guys that back at production meetings and when we're all having dinner and getting completely smashed. Having a quiet evening drink. I used to say then, I tell you what, that kid Darrell Walter, I said when he retired, I said he's got a job absolutely for sure. He'll be in television.
Wow.
There he was. Because he was a great interview. I mean, he always got something stupid to say, something funny to say, but at the same time, obviously he was very coherent and knew exactly what he was talking about. So he was a great interview. I remember him particularly. some of the others were always a bit nervous, and they're so big and ballsy on the track. Because you get them in front of the camera, and they sort of a bit like you, really.
Shy,
yeah. So no, I mean he was a good interview.
How well did they receive you, though? You spoke about it a little bit. I mean, you came from a lot of big time racing, and were well known, and a lot of times that whole that paradox or that paradigm when people cross over into other forms of racing. Sometimes it's not received well. Sometimes it is. How was it for you?
Well, as I say, I was always terribly impressed with the NASCAR guys how well I was received, because I thought this could be a bit tough. They're going to say I was some snotty-nosed elitist Formula One driver or something, but I never had any of that at all.
Never did.
No, and every time I'd go into the garage area when I was a pit reporter, people were always terribly willing to speak to me, more than they were to say somebody like Mike Joy, who they did regard as just a reporter.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike has gone on to a fantastic career, and he's one of the best out there.
But you were a driver.
But I was a driver, and they all knew that, and they respected me for it, and very much so. And it was the same when I went to the Indy 500. I thought, these guys are going to get all weird, but they weren't. They were tremendously good.
Yeah.
In fact, when I very first raced in the States, I was about 21, and I went to do the Daytona 3-hour, which was the forerunner of the Rolex 24-hour. And it was a 3-hour GT race. It was called the 3-hour Continental. And Big Bill really wanted to internationalize his speedway. He wanted to be Daytona International Speedway. So he had a whole bunch of guys come from Europe, and I'm one of them. And we were all terribly well received at the time. And I remember being particularly Donnie Allison took me sort of under his wing and showed me around and looked after me really well. So always had good respect from them. And when we go to the Hall of Fame meetings in March in Daytona, the Allison brothers are always there, and we all just get on really well together. As you get older, of course, all that competitive stuff dies away.
Yeah.
When you're still in it, everybody's looking at each other just a bit wary, like a couple of fighting dogs or something like that. But when you all get old, you reminisce about the whole thing. It's all very different.
I'm a really good friend with Mark Jr. and during our racing career, there was always this sort of hint of competitiveness, always underlying, even in some of the best moments. And now it's completely gone. And every time we hang out, there's nothing. There's not another. We're not going to run a race against each other the next weekend.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the best.
It does. I mean, Bobby Unser always I used to find a bit intimidating, because he did a few Formula 5000 races. And I always found him a bit intimidating and a bit insular. But I mean, since he's retired, we've been to a lot of events together, and he's been mild, because now he's not terribly well at the moment, and he's got a wheelchair all the time. But it's hard, and it's hard to think of someone like Bobby Unser in a wheelchair. But when we got together after we stopped racing, I mean, our whole outlook on life just changes completely. And as you get older and older, it changes even more. Because that light at the end of the tunnel is now getting bigger. Only it's a big bloody black hole at the end of the tunnel. Not a light. That's the trouble. It's the black hole at the end of the tunnel. It's getting bigger.
You mentioned Ken Squire and working with him. One of my favorite things about Ken is what I would call the Squireisms, and it's these phrases like freight train down the back straightaway, covering a city block in this second, or he just had these sort of things that he would say.
Yeah.
And how had you worked with Kim before that? Before 1979 500?
I worked with him all through 76.
All right, so
I'd worked with him quite a bit. And the reason I got onto CBS was actually Ken put me up for the job when I went for this terrible interview.
Right.
But it was only because of he had interviewed me at races and things.
When he's saying some of these things next to you, what are you like? Damn, that's good.
Where did that come from?
Well,
nobody's done it that way before, I think, and nobody's done it that way since.
The first time you hear it, it's great. The 700 side loses his head a bit, but the big thing about Ken, you'd always got to watch him before the race started. because we'd go up on the roof at Daytona. What are you going to say? What are you going to talk about? Can I say, well, and he said, what do you call the Great American Race? That was his big phrase. And I remember one race. I can't remember which race it was. It'd be like early 80s. We'd done about 4 by then. And we'd done it. He said, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, it's a lot hotter. It's the hottest day we've had this last 3 weeks by far. I mean, I'm sure it's going to change the track a lot because it's very much hotter. The sun's shining like it hasn't been, and the temperature's gone up like 10 degrees. Track temperature's going to go up a lot, so that'll have a big effect on the cars and where the groove is. Okay, all right.
A 3-pitch strikeout.
We get up there, and I mean, it's a big deal because now we know there's at least 8 to 9 million people out there watching us. And you're standing there in the sunshine trying to not look too much like a twerp while he goes off. Welcome to the 99th running or the 80, whatever the hell it was, of the Daytona 500, the Great American Race. I'm Ken Squire. And today on the pole is who it was on the pole and all that stuff. And he said, what's even... Today, the drivers are facing a big quantity. The temperature's gone up, the track temperature's gone up, the groove is going to move. And he said every damn thing I was going to say.
Left you with nothing.
So he looked at me and said, what do you see, Dave? I said, yep. I didn't know what else to say.
Yeah.
So I just said the same thing again. Yeah.
We talked about
did that a couple of times.
Yeah. We joke about that a little bit.
But you still got obviously a lot now, and you're going to be in it for the next 20 years.
Oh, I hope so.
But we doing the opening for the Talladega 500. Have you been in the booth? Well, I might have changed now. But on that horrible ladder to get into it?
No, it's changed. Yeah.
Well, it's this awful bloody ladder to get up into the little tiny booth. And we used to have an assistant, our assistant producer was Diane Keogh. Diane Patterson, she became. Anyway, we hunched it, and we were at this. Ken and I standing quite next to each other. And who else was in there with us? There's 3 of us. But anyway, there's Ken and I standing there. And the cameraman's about where you are, or even closer. I mean, the lights, the camera, and on the light. It's okay, like 2 minutes ago, a minute ago. And I mean, with about 30 seconds to go, or maybe 45 seconds. Ken sneezes, and this great lump of snot goes all down his tie.
Oh, no.
Diane Keogh said, "You
out of the zone. That's a ball."
Imagine a few expletives.
Yeah.
Her whips out some bit of tissue, and because we're down to about 20 seconds to go now, and scrubs his tires.
Hit towards the shortstop.
The dangers of broadcasting. There's always something. There's always something happens right before you go.
You know, NBC now does a spy cam with Dale Jr. So now all those things that happen
they at
that
least
you can't see.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having a spy cam on you during the entire thing?
I cannot. No.
They tell us at least we're going to be on TV.
They tell you, yeah, right.
Let's take a break and get comfortable. Not too comfortable that we don't get back to talking to David Hobbs, but comfy enough to get this point across, Dale.
That's right, Mike. There's no more coming home and changing into sweatpants, right?
Nah, right. What I'm talking
No
about.
more leaving the studio, going home and putting on those things.
No.
Now you can have pants that feel as good at the podcast studio as they do at home on the couch with Public Rec. They're the first sweatpants that have waist and inseam sizing. All right, so you know what that is?
Yeah, I know what both are.
All right,
A waist
explain it to me.
and inseam size. Well, I mean, you got a waist, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a size. And inseam sizing,
That's the length
it
of
means
your
it
waist
means.
down to your ankle.
So what it's saying is, you know how sweatpants, it's like one size fits all. You're gonna stretch them out, or they're gonna run loose. This one, it's more fit for you.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're short, you're tall, somewhere in between, they fit perfectly. I like the design details. The elastic waistband with internal drawstring, the 2 deep front zipper pockets, and the fake front fly. It fools everybody.
That's right.
I ordered a pair. At first, I figured I'd wear them just around the house. But then, I like them so much, I wore them to the podcast and just kept on wearing them. I had Amy actually look at them before I left the house, and she said, "Hey, they look great." No problem. You know what? She probably wouldn't have let me walk out of the house in a regular pair of sweatpants. Sure. She said, "Where the hell are you going? Dressed like that?"
And we wouldn't let you in the studio either.
Oh, you wouldn't?
No, probably not.
So the window between I'm in work pants and can't wait to change and finally I can relax, that window's disappeared. Right? At work, at home, everywhere, these public rec pants are comfy, they're suitable, wherever you go. Public Rec's all-day, everyday pants are the most versatile, stylish, and comfortable pants you'll ever own. And right now, they have an exclusive offer only for our listeners. Head to publicrec.com/Dale Jr. today, and you get 10% off your order automatically applied at the checkout. That's Public Rec, rec spelled REC.com/Dale Jr. for 10% off. Don't sleep on this rare opportunity to get that discount. Publicrec.com/Dale Jr. What made you want to get into broadcasting? You've been a driver for all these years and raced all types of race cars. What was it about broadcasting?
Well, I've always been a bit of a blabbermouth and fairly self-assured, although like you, I'm also very shy too. But I don't know, the whole thing appealed to me, and there wasn't so much money in racing then. I mean, obviously, we never had money like you guys had in NASCAR. Nobody did except the Formula One guys. And I wasn't in Formula One, and I wasn't in NASCAR. And so I kind of did it as a secondary income for a bit. And then, obviously, when the racing stopped, it became my primary income. And then I started that dealership up in Milwaukee, which we've got now, David Hobbs Honda. But that came about really, it's just another thing. And I always felt that I could explain things pretty well. And I think over the years I proved that I could actually explain things. And everywhere we went, don't talk down to the guys like you, to the real experts. Don't talk down to the real fans because they hate it. But on the other hand, networks are always wanting to get new viewers in. And the only way you can get new viewers in is to make it entertaining as well as... so instead of all being a whole bunch of experts, it's got to be entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what TV is. It's entertainment. Even the sports is entertainment. The news has got to be entertaining now. So I think we always covered it pretty well and tried to make it, for the non-NASCAR fans. Obviously, the CBS are trying to sweep in millions of people who have no idea what NASCAR is. So you try and explain it without being too basic and upsetting the people that do that.
Right.
And I always think I did a pretty good job of that.
I did too. That's a tough line to walk, and I think
it is.
We do it today. Where there was a particular moment in the race yesterday where Kevin Harvick was out there on the racetrack and he was racing and he turned his alternator off. And he did that to gain a couple miles per hour out of the motor, or a couple of horsepower out of the engine. And his crew chief was telling him, hey, watch your volts. If you're going to run that alternator switch off, make sure you keep an eye on your volts. And during the commercial break, we're talking about this. And we were making the decision whether to share it with the audience, because you don't want to, you got to walk that line between trying to not get, you don't want to go in the weeds with the technical stuff. But there is that hardcore fan that would love to know about that information, right? And so I think it's even in the broadcast today, we sort of talk about, man, where are we? Are we entertaining right now? Or are we
how inside?
Yeah,
insider do you want to go?
How insider? Yeah, that was actually the phrase that Marty Snyder used in the conversation we were having. He's like, "This is insider baseball, but
inside baseball."
Well, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I didn't know you could switch. I didn't know you could do that. Yeah. As you say, save a couple of horsepower. Right. But obviously, you might make sure you don't run out of juice.
If your philosophy is don't talk down to the fans, what is your philosophy about other racers that are actually broadcasting? Because we have a real funny clip of you basically just calling it as it is, but you basically call the guy a dork, right? You call the driver who crashed. Matthew, do you have that?
Oh, Adam Carroll, that's just such a boneheaded move, you dork.
It should stay in play.
So I love that. Do you know how much we love that? That is great broadcasting right there. Did you ever worry about what the other drivers think?
No, I never did. I never worried about what they thought, because who was it? I couldn't see the clock.
Carol Dutch, just such a boneheaded move, you dork.
Well, there you go. It was a boneheaded move.
Yeah.
He goes, I stand behind what I said.
Yeah, I mean, and of course that's what attracted a lot of viewers to my start of broadcasting was exactly that. And I never got any complaints from any other driver, and I never got any complaints from management. And I don't remember them ever saying to me, by the way, you better be a bit careful because so-and-so got hold of us and said that he didn't appreciate what you said about him.
Yeah.
I never heard that.
Really?
No.
I struggle with that as all the drivers.
Well, it's a bit difficult for you because you're right in the paddock with them.
I know.
They'll give you a door. They'll give you a flat nose. Is
Yeah.
What
they know where I'm at. They got my number, and you want to. But the fan knows what happened. The fans watching it, they know what a dork.
well, they like it too.
They know a dork when they see one.
But the thing, because the funny thing about driving, I just still find absolutely fascinating how drivers have such adoring fans. And I mean, they get so incredibly kind of passionate about it. And like an Alonso fan in Formula One, I mean, people just absolutely rave about him being the best ever driver. And he was an incredibly good driver. But I just wondering where this passion comes from. What makes suddenly somebody decide that this man is sort of coming next to God, and it's just something to be revered. I never felt that way. I mean, you ask me why I got in broadcasting. Everybody thinks I'm a car man because I race cars, but I'm not really. I'm not really into cars. I mean, when I was a kid, I liked to race, running races, and I liked to play competitive sports. And then I got over it. It was motorbikes, and then it was cars, and I really wanted to win. And I really just loved going fast, and that being right on the edge, which of course on the highway, back in my youth, was relatively easy to do in the UK because the roads are pretty narrow and twisty, so it was good fun to drive on the road. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to drive like a lunatic on the roads, I might as well drive like a lunatic on the track. So that's what I mean, I really just always enjoyed the racing, but I never particularly enjoyed watching it.
Really?
No, I wouldn't really go miles and miles and miles because, Dale Earnhardt or Fernando Alonso might be in the race. Right. It would never occur to me to do that. Yeah. But to go there to race, that'd be different.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, let's go ahead, dive into your career as a driver. Yeah.
Well, not much to see there.
Well, your first race car what was your first race car?
My first car was my mum's Morris Oxford, which is a 1952 little sedan.
You took your mom's car and raced it.
Yeah.
How did your mom feel about that?
Out of play.
Well, she didn't really think much about it. But I had modified it, so I modified the exhaust system. So it's very loud and noisy, which to me as a 19-year-old was very important to have to make lots of noise in a race car.
But to be clear, most moms do care about that.
Yeah,
They've done that to their car.
So what she thought was she'd go to the hairdresser, drive down the main street, and this thing making all this noise. But she never complained about it.
Yeah.
And I
what did you do? Take it and put a number on it? And
no,
go down to
the
club meet? And run.
In those days, exactly what you did. You drove. My first race was about 120 miles an hour at a place called Snetterton, which is an old converted World War II airbase. And you race around the perimeter. And that's how most racetracks in England were. You race around the perimeter of old airfields, which is exactly what Silverstone is.
Yeah.
Silverstone was like that. Snetterton was like that. Alton Park was in the park. Brands Hatch was built. Goodwood was a big racetrack in those days. That goes down. So you've been to Goodwood.
I haven't.
You haven't?
No, I've never been to Europe. Never been over.
I can't imagine. I can't believe you haven't been invited to go to Goodwood.
Well, I've more than likely
probably has.
I'm dying to go. Like, I want to go to Le Mans. I want to go to Brands Hatch. I've drove on all these tracks on video. Right?
Yeah.
Bathurst. I got to go to Bathurst.
Oh, did you?
In my mind, Bathurst is one of the most dangerous tracks in the world.
Oh, my God.
I mean that in a complimentary way.
Yeah.
Like a brave. It takes real real guts.
Going over that mountain is
It's insane.
It's
But
very-
that's just Australians in general. That's who they are as people.
Yeah.
Gutsy, ballsy,
yeah.
not afraid to do anything.
No, they're not.
Is it the most dangerous? I mean, you've been on all of them, right? I mean, like, what
Yeah.
is the most dangerous?
Well, of course, the most dangerous of all used to be the old Spa, the first Spa, which is the same as the current Spa, but a lot with another 5 miles added on.
Yeah.
And of course, when I first went there, I mean, there was nothing. The road was just a narrow country Belgian highway, and it ended in a grass verge. And then there would be fences to keep the cows and the sheep in, and there was usually barbed wire. And then you'd go through a couple of villages, and you'd go past people's houses, just right at the edge of the road with their garden wall. Dogs would come out from time to time and run across the road, stuff like that. They were really, and of course, even then, with the Ford GT40s, you're averaging nearly 150 around this racetrack with a couple of hairpins.
Yeah.
So, and it was all wide open, and a Formula One driver by the name of Chris Bristow had his head cut off when he went off the road in the Formula One race, and because he went through a barbed wire fence. That was a bad day, because Sterling Moss broke both his legs in practice. Chris Bristow lost his head when he went through the barbed wire, and a chap called Alan Stacey was killed when a bird hit his head, all in the same weekend. And it used to be like that.
How did you, as a driver, compartmentalize that?
Well, I don't know how. When I talked to my wife now, she was the one who really had to compartmentalize it. And how she did it, I don't honestly know. Because we've been married now for getting on for 60 years, and she was there right when I started. She was my girlfriend. And I hadn't even started racing. I was 40. We were just going fast on my motorbike around the countryside. She was on the back, and so she'd always used to the speed. And then when I started to race, she liked that. She found it good social fun. We used to take our friends, go with friends to race. And it wasn't very serious. And then when it started to get serious, she accepted it all very well. And how we all accepted all that death, I wouldn't do it now. I absolutely would not. But when you're 19, 20, 21, because in 1968, I went to Jimmy Clark's funeral. And that really did make me think, ooh, if it can happen to Jimmy, I guess it could happen to all of us, because he, to me, was a hero and just absolutely was the best. And still is one of the best ever. And quite amazing. And I was at the funeral with Mike Spence. And we were both pretty teary-eyed at the end of the church. Obviously, I can imagine, was packed. And we're pretty teary-eyed, and Mike Spence was picked up by Colin Chapman, who was Jimmy Clark's owned Lotus. And he sent Mike Spence to fill in for Jimmy Clark to Indianapolis. And within a few hours of getting there, Mike Spence was killed. So I went to Jimmy Clark's funeral with Mike Spence 1 week. 2 weeks later, I went to Mike Spence's funeral. 2 weeks after that, Ludovico Scarfiotti, who was a top Italian driver, was killed in a hill climb in a Ferrari. And a month after that, Joe Slessor was killed in a Honda Formula One car at Rouen, going down the hill towards the hairpin. So 1968 was a pretty bad year. And yet, I don't know why we all accept it, because today it just would be absolutely, totally unacceptable. Yeah.
I wonder if people are born with that. I always wonder that, because even people have asked you about compartmentalizing the dangers of racing, and I always just wonder, there's some people that are born with it. I don't know that you develop that after a while. I think it's something that you just ingrained.
I think it must be, because we knew it was there, and yet we still raced. Why, I'm not quite sure, but we did. But I wouldn't do it now. Crikey, I wouldn't drive down the road now at any sort of speed without a crash hat and seat full harness, all that sort of stuff. Because when I started, I raced a nylon shirt and jeans with an open-faced cork helmet. But as much use as putting the sticky plaster on your face. It was. And fire was a thing that we all dreaded most of all.
Yeah.
Because there were no bladders or anything like that. Everything was in an aluminum tank, just a regular gas tank.
Pop a hole in that. Easy.
Yeah, and the pipe to the engine would be just held on by Jubilee clips, what we call Jubilee clips. You call them those screw clips. That's all it was. When I drove Formula Junior, they were pretty short races.
Inside, 1 ball, 1 strike.
You know, like 50 miles. And if we ever did like a 60 or 70 mile race, we'd put an extra gallon of gas
For a strike.
because it was a tube frame,
270
spindly little
with
tube.
1
I mean, not
long
as big as
ball
this
and
tube holding
8
this
runs
mic up.
batted in.
Very, very spindly stuff. I sat in the gas tank because being a bit tall, the cars were made for shorter guys. So I had to take the seat out and I sat straight in the tank.
It's time
And then
for
we
the
put another
7th
gallon
stretch.
and a half on top of the frame behind the dashboard, held on by a bungee cord with a plastic pipe that went from it down into the main tank right by my right knee. So if you had any sort of a crack, your knee would have just ripped this pipe right off, and I mean, there's gas everywhere.
That's nuts.
Nowadays, the gas on all forms
And he
of racing
swings
is
and
really
misses.
well hidden in the Formula One cars. It's right in the middle of the car. It's all dry brakes, so if everything falls apart, the fuel won't come out.
He crushed that one.
And of course, fire got a lot of people in it.
Just missed the home run.
Always frightened the hell out of me, that did.
Yeah, fire is,
He's on his way
you know,
to
fire is,
third.
I always say this, and
Safe
it
at
sounds
third.
stupid
He
to say it,
slides in
but
there for a 3-base hit.
I'd never been in a fire before until I was in that Corvette fire in 2004. It is hot. And I know, I don't even know how to make this understandable, but fire, like when you stand around a campfire, you get an idea of how hot fire is or could
That's a
be.
ground ball
And
hit
maybe
to the
you've-
second baseman.
You've got burned by a stove or touching a hot
A run
surface.
crosses the
But
plate.
that is not even a freaking ballpark.
No.
Fire, like the heat that created by a fire in a car, is hotter. It's hot as the sun, and it's like a million bees. It's so hot,
Yeah.
and it is nothing to be playing with.
It used to frighten me. We raced with a guy called Peter Proctor. He was a lovely guy. He was very successful. He did a bit of Formula. He did a bit of single-seater stuff. And he drove a Ford Anglia. Well, if you've ever seen a Ford Anglia, I mean, it's a little tiny car.
There's a double play.
Anyway, he was racing out of Goodwood
Double
because the
play
British
was
saloon car racing
just
was
like
very
the tracks,
popular,
big boy.
just like NASCAR is here. And it was all Jags and Austins and Morrises and Fords and all racing there together. And he had a big crash at Goodwood. It would be 1962, I think. And it caught fire. And poor old Peter has been terribly disfigured ever since. And he is just so normal about it. His face is all burned, his lips are burned, his eyelids, everything's burned. And he's very disfigured. And he and his wife have also been married for nearly 60 years now. They bicycle around France and they do all sorts of really good things together, and he goes everywhere. And you look at him and you talk to him and you never, ever, ever give it a thought. But he's been like that now for 50 odd years.
Yeah.
And because we had those little
After
cotton
7, the Yankees
driver's
by
suits,
4.
those Dunlop driver's suits. You used to
The
soak them in
Yankees call for a reliever.
boracic
Brooke
powder or
Vince comes
something,
in from the
which is
bullpen.
supposed to make it fire resistant. Well, of course it didn't. Oh,
Good Lord.
No. Nowadays, the suits are fantastic. But so, I mean,
But even then-
as you said, that
Well,
they-
even the thing about fire is that people, I think a lot of people sometimes wouldn't be aware of is that not only, I mean, obviously the fire itself is dangerous, but the heat from the fire. So in the Corvette crash, the interior of the car got peaked at 750 degrees. And
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, even though you may not be near flame, that intense heat you can only handle for
seconds,
just seconds.
May at the most.
Yeah.
And apart from the else, it sucks all the oxygen out of the atmosphere anyway.
Yeah,
And-
quickly.
Yeah. Like that fire with Nicky Lauda, who just died a few weeks back, with a lung, they gave him a lung transplant. And of course, if you ever watch the film Rush, I thought it was fantastic.
Two balls and no
The
strikes.
racing scenes weren't great. But the story about these two guys going for the same championship in completely diametrically opposite ways. The way they both approached life was so different, so wonderful. A great story. But when those scenes when they're
Takes a tailing fastball.
vacuuming out his lungs, because of all the debris in there and the burnt flesh, it's a miracle he lasted as long as he did.
Yeah.
Obviously his lungs must have recovered mostly
Pops him
because
up.
every time I met him he seemed to be fine. Obviously a bit
And he
burnt,
puts it away for the
but
out.
fine. But obviously it got him in
Stepping
the
up
end.
to the plate with a
But I mean
single
he
already,
was
Johnny
into his
Damon.
70s, so But I mean, miracle.
We all hope to have that full of a life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You've been in a bunch of crashes yourself. I mean, and if I know the story right, you correct me where I'm wrong. One of them, you were about to actually make your F1 debut, right? And this wasn't in a race. This was in a. Is that not right?
That's exactly right. The only times I've ever been, I never got. I mean, I don't know whether I'm proud to say this or whether I should keep it quiet, but I raced for 30 years in one of the most dangerous periods from 1959 to 1980, when cars, the speeds went up absolutely the massive rate, mainly because obviously a lot of it was engine development, but a lot of it was aero, but most of it was tires. I mean, when I started racing, tires were that wide, always had tread. Then suddenly Firestone and Goodyear got into European racing, into Formula One and into sports car racing. And tire sizes went from like that to like a foot, like 22 inches across the tread, and of course they went to slicks. So the grip just changed unbelievably. So speeds rocketed up. And the safety of the cars, the integrity of the cars didn't change much for a long time, and nor did the circuits. And in all that time, I never even broke a fingernail in a race car. Meanwhile, I had 2 road crashes. One, I fractured my skull and was in hospital for a week. Then the other one, I was on the way to my first Formula One race, but part of the deal was I had to go to Tim Parnell's race shop in Slough, just outside London, right by London Airport, and pick up the car on a trailer. So I had a tow bar put on my Ford Cortina and was driving down to Slough to pick the car up. And the laundry van coming the other way, I was doing about 80, 85, and the laundry van coming the other way suddenly did a right-hand turn into a industrial complex. And I mean, we just slid into this truck, turned this big 10-ton laundry van over and flattened the car. And I had my seatbelt on, but my head hit the steering wheel. And I broke my nose and my cheeks and my jaw and my right arm, because I don't think I thought to let go of the wheel. So that, obviously I didn't do my first Formula One race.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, and I was in hospital for quite a long time with that. The worst part about that was my nose had got broken, and every morning a nurse would come along with a glass tube and stick it up my nose so that it didn't heal together inside it.
Wow.
And it used to hurt like,
I imagine.
I would yelp. And she said, I thought you were supposed to be a tough racing driver.
They're sticking glass up my nose. I think there's something.
Anyway.
She just left it up there once you
so-
got it in there. I just said leave it in there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to shove it in there tomorrow.
I thought of that at the time. And my wife, of course, we were on vacation. We were on vacation at the seaside in East Anglia, and I had gone back in the car to get my racing gear. Of course, in those days, you were still always ready to go. You took every time you went to a race meet, you took your helmet and your overalls, because you never know, looking for a drive. Not like today, you were always looking for a drive. And a friend of mine called Jack Brown came with me, and I put a seatbelt on, which was just a diagonal and a lap strap, but not on an inertia reel. I mean, it was a fix you were in. And he said, oh, well, if you're going to put your seatbelt on, I better put mine on then, because in those days, people just didn't put seatbelts. They had this irrational fear they were going to get trapped in the car, and it would be worse than getting thrown out somehow. And I got all this banged up, and old Jack Brown was sitting next to me, and when I looked at the wreckage a couple of weeks after I got out of hospital, a couple of weeks later I got out of hospital, I mean, his seat and the dashboard just all looked like one. Where his legs went, I have no idea. And somehow he didn't get hurt because he had the belt on. If he hadn't had the belt, if we hadn't had our belts on, we'd probably both be dead.
Wow.
And here's the
Dead as mutton those days.
You have, so you've been, you got an amazing history in Formula One and racing overseas in 24 hours and all kinds of different things. And you know pretty much every type of motorsport, or have witnessed it or broadcast it or raced in it. What's the preconceived notion of stock cars over in Europe? What do people, I guess, Formula One fans, even drivers, what's their opinion of stock cars in NASCAR?
Well, I think people appreciate it's difficult, isn't it? And a lot of the NASCAR stuff is live on various cables in England.
You think it's probably changed tons over the decades as far as the respect level for both sides, right?
I'm sure. It has. Now, because I live here, so I really don't know what they're thinking over there, because I'm here more than I'm there now. Now I'm an American citizen, and we've lived here for a long time now. But it's like everything, the world is swamped with sport. Bernie Eccleston could never understand how it would be possible that Formula One wouldn't take off in America and become the number one sport, one of the number one sports here, like it is in the rest of the world. And we always used to say to Bernie, they got 4 major leagues. Obviously, the 800-pound gorilla is the NFL. Then I said they got baseball, they got hockey, and they got basketball, all of which are huge national sports and take up a tremendous amount of time. If you think that one of those networks like ABC, NBC, or CBS is going to preempt like an NBA game or an NFL game to put on a Formula One race, I said it isn't going to happen. You're not going to be able to sign a 5-year contract where they got all these races and they're going to preempt.
Lowell digs into the play.
Still don't quite get it. And of course in England and in Europe there's a tremendous amount of single-seater racing, and obviously there's the World Touring Car Challenge, which is in Europe, which is all the European cars. And in England you've got the BTCC, which is the British Touring Car Challenge.
My very favorite racing.
Which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's like stock car racing in my mind
it's
in Europe.
Exactly like stock car racing, but it's all on road courses. And so for them, there's so much stuff to watch, just like there is here. There's so much stuff to watch, but obviously, NASCAR has risen to the top to be the number one, motorsport. IndyCar, helped by NBC, I think, a lot.
Yeah,
He's making a huge comeback, and the IndyCar race in the last 4 or 5 years has been tremendously close. I mean, the qualifying times, the races, like 3 years ago when I was last doing it, 9 different winners in 16 races. So you can't do much better than that. And Formula One is steadily making inroads. But over here, and of course, you saw yesterday at the US Grand Prix. I mean, they had a huge crowd. And they had a very big crowd on Saturday for qualifying. The weather was perfect. A bit cool for some reason. Very cool. But so NASCAR in Europe. Well, obviously there's a lot of people who will love watching because it's such close racing. A lot of lead passes, a lot of lead changes, all that sort of thing, which Americans love. The Europeans aren't quite so fixated on that, but there's so much for them to watch. But it's still in there. Yeah, it's in there. A bit like Formula One is in here, but there's all sorts of other things to watch here, and there's all sorts of other things to watch over there.
Yeah, you said you don't love to watch racing much, but what are some of your favorite types of racing to watch these days?
Well, I mean, obviously, I watch a bit of NASCAR. I watch a bit of everything, I'm still interested in the Formula One, so I watch that as much as I can. I like to watch Le Mans, but I mean, I used to love doing Le Mans. I mean, I did it 20 times, and it was one of my favorite races to drive in. It's not my favorite race to watch, especially on TV, because it's one of the things that makes it difficult for just a non-real keen spectator to watch. Is once they start getting all jumbled up, after about the first half an hour, when the leaders have started to lap people, and of course you've got so many classes now, GT, GTD, you've got the Pro-Am and this and that. You've got so many classes in there, and you've got a whole bunch of 911s running around, all looking exactly the same. And they're actually running like 3 or 4 different classes. Plus, the prototypes are so much quicker than anything else that it's hard for a real non-fan to comprehend. But if you go to the 24 hour, I mean, there's 300,000 or 400,000 people there. Of course, 8 miles long, spread around.
I've always wanted to go to the mall.
You should go. It's a great event. It's like a must attend. Like you must go to Daytona 500. You must go to the Indy 500. You want to go to Le Mans, you got to go to Le Mans. You got to go to if you can, you got to go to the Super Bowl. There are just some things.
What's the go-to F1?
You go to F1, well,
or location. It's got to be Monaco.
I think, well, it is, but it's because it's the worst race to watch. because there's least overtaking, and viewing is terrible there. I mean, because it's also confined. Obviously, it's helped enormously now by the big screens. So, because they flash by it. I mean, you can't see them from far. I mean, somewhere like Silverstone, if you're a spectator there, you can see the car for quite a long way as they disappear in the distance. But all road courses, unlike, that's the other thing about ovals. If you sit in the grandstand at Daytona, you can see the whole thing. You can see the whole thing's right there. Plus, you've got a giant screen as well. And you go to somewhere like Road America, which is 4 miles around. You're down at turn 5, you see them coming down the straight, see them outbraking each other, going up the road to turn 6. That's all you see. Unless you sit on the hill, you can see a couple of corners. But if you go a big screen there, it makes all the difference. Whereas the big ovals, you can see the whole thing, which makes a big difference.
Phil, have you been to an F1 race?
They're making a pitching change.
I would love to go to. I went to. I love the supercars in Australia.
Oh yeah.
I went to Phillip Island and got to watch that race.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. We took a rental car and drove over to Bathurst and went around that racetrack.
Yeah.
In a minivan, and we went to the little tiny Hall of Fame, or not a Hall of Fame, but the museum, and watched the video and went through the whole process. But got to hang out with Paul Morris and.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Went to his.
I drove into Bathurst.
The Red Sox have won 2 straight games.
With Denny Holmes,
Score,
who was a New Zealander.
The New York Yankees,
same as an Australian to you and me,
Yeah.
but he's a New Zealander. And he was world champion in 1967. And he and I drove a BMW in the Bathurst race. It's a long time ago now.
Yeah.
And of course, poor Denny, in the end, when he died of a heart attack in the Bathurst 1000. As you come out of that dangerous bit you were talking about, going across the mountain,
Yes.
with the walls there, and it's pretty scary. But then you come out and there's a long downhill straight,
Facts.
which is fine, but there's all these houses on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
with their garden, their front yard comes right down the track.
Even today, when it's not race season, it's a public street.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And Denny, apparently he felt something coming and he just pulled over and just died there right in the car.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you're a racing driver, that's the way to go. I suppose the most dangerous race in the world, to me now, is the Isle of Man TT motorbike races. Have you ever watched that on video?
I've seen some of that. Yeah.
I mean, now that is stupid. It's a 37-mile lap on public roads, and they come down Bray Hill. They average 130 miles an hour, and they go right through all these towns and streets. And England has these pillar boxes, like a mailbox, and they're cast iron, and they're right there, right on the curb.
What the heck?
And there's no barrier anywhere. It's all curbs, trees, gardens, people's yards, come right, and gate posts, brick walls everywhere. I mean, the thing talk about is, and they hurtle through there, and they jump on these jumps, and they come down on the rear wheel, and oh my God, you watch these guys, and they got video, they got on YouTube, they got video going around on these bikes, and you just cannot get your breath.
Yeah.
Now they go off at timed intervals, so they're not together much.
Yeah, right.
But nevertheless, I mean, if you want something dangerous to do, go to the Isle of Man.
Yeah. I'd like to go to Brands Hatch to watch a race on the Indy course, the small one.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, the original, yeah.
And then in a British Touring Car Championship race. I'd love to see that. I'd like to meet Jason Plato and Matt Neal. Those two guys I watched race for.
Have you really?
Forever.
Yeah.
Well, on TV, we get
Yeah.
some of those races over here, and I've watched them almost their whole careers because I don't know what it is. That's a physical, beating and banging style of racing.
Yeah, very much.
About the most physical style of racing that I can think of that I've witnessed from Europe. So that's kind of the stuff I'm into. But
have you ever watched those truck races from Europe? Well, I mean, the big trucks.
Oh,
yeah,
I could never quite understand why that hasn't taken off over here.
we
like
had
our trucks.
We
yeah.
had that. We had back in the, I think it was the late 70s and early 80s. They ran semis they had a semi series, and they ran like 4 races a year. They ran Atlanta, Rockingham, and there's some video and so forth. And they had several. They had like 25 entries. I mean, and they were basically semi-modified, trucks.
It still exists, like just not broadcast nationally, but that Bandit series, they come by here a bunch.
Yeah.
They're pretty big in the Midwest and whatnot. But that stuff is
semis.
nuts. Yeah, semis.
Really?
It's crazy. They raced up at Hickory.
Yeah,
and
they ran Dover.
Dover. Yep.
I remember them running Dover.
Jeez.
Just
It is
billowing diesel smoke.
Diesel smoke.
pouring out.
And what gets me about those is they go places like Silverstone or Brands Hatch. I mean, I can't imagine what they do to the guardrail when they go sliding on the road. They must smash everything up completely.
Yeah, right.
I'm amazed that the track's letting them race there because the potential damage must be just horrendous.
Man.
Thing weighing thousands of pounds plowing into your guardrail.
I think
how
that it'd be
fast-
cool to have a NASCAR Cup race at Brands Hatch on the Indy course.
Oh, man.
The Indy courses are like the smaller of this. There's a lot of configurations, but it's it's kind of a compact little course.
I think it's too narrow for NASCAR.
You think it's too narrow?
It's probably getting on for it. But actually,
They run the
NASCAR
NASCAR Euro
Silverstone.
series
NASCAR
over there.
Silverstone would be pretty good. 'Cause
Really?
It's pretty wide open. I mean, the Formula One cars average 148 or 150 mile an hour around
Yeah.
Silverstone. There's no real tight turns.
Did you run at Monza with the big banking?
Well, funny you should ask that. I am the last person to win a race, include on the banking.
Really?
Yeah, Paul Hawkins, the Gulf team in 1968 when I was driving for Ford GT40 Gulf, the John Wires car. One of the races was the Monza 1000 Ks, and in those days it incorporated the whole track. So the pit lane or the pit straight at Monza is incredibly wide, and the pits were here then. So on the opening lap, you go down the pits. At the end of the pits was a chicane, and then you go around the banking, which was very rough, which is why they had the chicane. The banking was already, it's concave, it's like parabolic banking, so the higher you go, the faster you go. Obviously, there's nothing to stop you going over the top either.
There's no rail.
And it started to scallop out between the ribs, where the ribs held it all up. And then there was a chicane coming off it, so that you couldn't just go absolutely flat out. And then when you came off it through the chicane, you were now on the opposite side of the pit lane. The pit road then was probably 80 yards wide. And then you go on the course they go on now, except there were no chicanes. That first chicane you go around there, that wasn't there. You just went straight through the Curva Grande and straight down to the Lesmos. Now there's a second chicane, and you went straight down to Lesmos, through the two Lesmos, and then coming back, the left-hander, which is now the Ascari, Variante Ascari, has a bit of a chicane going into it. There was none there.
Yeah.
So then you go around the parabolica. Now you're back on the pit lane, pit side, and into the chicane. So it was about a 7-mile lap, 6-mile lap. And Paul Hawkins and I won that race. But they've never raced on it since, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So, and he and I won the race, and I think that's the last race they ever held on it. I mean, it's still there.
The banking's still there.
It's fascinating, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of creepy.
yeah, it is.
Kind
Yeah.
of like the
attracts you
Titanic laying at the bottom of the ocean.
It's kind you like.
When they raced there, they had that European Anglo, the American challenge there, where the Indy cars raced the Formula One cars. A lot of the Formula One cars didn't show up because it was too tough on their suspensions.
Yeah.
Even the American cars found it because the load was terrific, and I think it was pretty bumpy even then. That was back in 50.
Yeah.
7,
My
50.
curiosity, I guess, is that Europe built banked corners and shaped in. I mean, it has an oval-esque sort of feel to it. I always felt like that. NASCAR sort of like the oval. Where did the oval start? Right? Was it in? Where did the oval start? Where did banking come into play?
I think the first oval was Brooklands in England.
Really?
Down near, right by McLaren.
Yeah.
McLaren at Woking is just right
Was that
by.
a banked?
And that was very banked. That was again, it was
Right.
parabolic.
How big was
And they raced there before. I'm not quite sure about probably a couple of miles or a mile and a half.
Okay.
It looks like a big test track.
Yeah, and they used to race there before the war. And then when the war came, I think one of the aircraft manufacturers was building a factory there, and they took up a lot of the space. And
Right.
obviously, it's never been used since the war.
Yeah, I think it's still there,
There's
right?
a little tiny bit of it there. Yeah.
Like one turn.
Yeah.
So,
So that might have been the first bank track ever.
man.
I
So
don't know.
banked ovals almost originated and spun into